You would also note that this session is being recorded, so we'll stop the recording before the Q&A. So please don't be shy, and we encourage everyone to use this as an opportunity to learn and engage with our guests. Also, throughout the session, please feel free to use the chat box for comments or to type questions, and we'll address them later. So on to the next slide. We'll kick it off, and I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Tai Chong. He's a wonderful friend and an amazing advocate for community action. For those who don't know him, Tai Chong is a marine biologist who has been working on tropical coral reefs for the past decade. He is also co-founder of Our Singapore Reefs, which was established by a community of divers that organizes dive cleanups and promotes awareness about Singapore's marine biodiversity. So without further ado, over to you, Tai Chong.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining spending your evening with us over dinner. And I think today I have the huge privilege to have with us 4 speakers, amazing speakers, who have been doing quite a lot of work with regards to marine conservation in Singapore, as well as in the region. So before I start, I just want to highlight, in 2017, when we started Our Singapore Reef, we got to interact with a lot of people in Singapore, mostly scuba divers, and a lot of them are so passionate about marine conservation. And one question that we always get, it's how they can make a difference with regards to marine conservation, even though they're not scientists. And I think today's panel is really that kind of platform where we can actually find out a bit more from our 4 esteemed speakers and to understand what are some of the challenges they face and what are some of the advice they will give to every one of us so that we can create our small little wave of change for marine conservation. So today we have 4 amazing speakers, and I will take this chance to introduce them to you, and then we'll kick off with our fireside chat, and feel free to put in the questions at any point of time, and we'll try to pick it up as we go. We'll keep this very organic. It's really like a conversation, so feel free to chime in if you have any questions at any point of time. All right. So without further ado, let me just introduce our first speaker, and it's none other than Vasey. So Kay is the founder of Meshminds Foundation, a not-for-profit arts organization that empowers artists in Asia to focus on sustainable development of people and the planet. So over to you, Kay.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for having us, for having me. And I'm here on behalf of Meshminds. So look, we are partnered officially with the United Nations Environment Programme. And so they came to us with a problem. We have 6 of the top 20 marine litter polluters in the region in Southeast Asia. So they said, can we make a campaign? And we need to feature authentic, amazing people in this region, sustainability advocates just like Kathleen, who can then share what they've been up to and then hopefully maybe inspire others to take steps to then really avoid single-use plastic. So what we did was we created 4 augmented reality effects that allow people to have their own pledges, personalize their own messages, and also have fun at the same time. So we created a little video for you. So I've got a 60-second video to show you that tells you a bit about what we've done and what we've achieved, and then I'll tell you a little bit more. So let's have a look at that video. Thank you. So yeah, so you can see that we've engaged loads of people. We've spotlighted people across 7 different countries across Southeast Asia. The campaign finishes tomorrow, so it's been an amazing 100 days. And really to kind of mark the end, then we wanted to collaborate with Kathleen and the team at Coastal Natives to bring Waves of Change to you. So we've also been doing the art showcase that you'll see, featuring 5 different Singapore artists really getting behind ocean pollution topics, okay? I personally as well on my own journey was inspired by Kathleen and the film festival to then commission our own film. 2022 is coming very soon, and phase 2 of this campaign is also coming. So we commissioned a really short, it's 2.5 minutes long. I'm going to show you 9 seconds of it now. It's called Plastic with a K on the end. It's all filmed in Malaysia, all Southeast Asian actors, and hopefully this is going to be really enabling us to put Southeast Asian voices on the map, basically, that they for too long have been missing in this whole discussion. So here we go, 9 seconds of what's coming. Just a tiny taster there, but yeah, it features all Asian actors and this little girl who sees the future, a potential future. If we don't act now, that marine litter is going to triple by 2040. So we must do something about it. So it's very visceral. It's going to be quite hard hitting. It might even make some people cry. But that's what we feel needs to happen to get people's attention and to get them to have some real action. So thank you again for having me tonight, and thank you again so much to Kathleen for inspiring me on my own personal journey as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Kay. Oh, love the video. And for those who are not too aware of this, Kathleen inspired a lot of people. She's usually very shy about it. Yeah, but I think me too. I was very inspired by Kathleen the moment I met her a couple of years back. And I think the next next speaker that we're going to introduce, it's none other than Naomi Clark-Shen. Right? She's now studying her PhD on sharks and rays at James Cook University, Singapore, and she has been doing a lot of work for various conservation organizations, including WWF, Traffic, National Geographic, as well as Dorsal Effects. So I'll leave it to Naomi to tell us more about herself. Naomi.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just keep it quick. So basically, you see a lot of cool social media posts of people swimming with sharks and everything. I'm the complete opposite. So I spend my time down at smelly fishing ports, handling the dead sharks and rays that are caught by fisheries. And my PhD has basically been me dissecting them, and it gets very bloody and smelly, but basically we're doing this to try and help protect them from overfishing. Yeah, so keeping it short. Thank you.
Thanks, Naomi. So if you're interested to find out more about Naomi after today's session, I think there are a number of news features on her and her work. It's really interesting, and I really love some of the features. And our third speaker for today is Rachana, Thap, and she comes from Cambodia. So she's the Executive Director of Marine Conservation Cambodia, and she's really, really young, and is a non-profit based in southern Cambodia and working alongside various local fishing communities with regards to marine conservation. And their work is also featured in the feature film Currency in the Waves of Change Festival 2021. Rachana, over to you.
Hi. Okay, that's my video. Hi, I'm Rachana Thap, and I'm working for Marine Conservation Cambodia, which is based on the island, and working 24 hours on the ground, with the local fishermen, and just diving deep down and understanding what is their problem and what is the real deal, in the water and on the water. And also, we're also working closely with national government in order to assure them that everything that we're doing is correct, and everybody's happy, and officially inform to the government, what's happening about the currency of, it's just very basic, and we're just working nonstop basically. So yes, I hope you can have a chance to go watch the currency film, and you would see what is happening at the moment. Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna turn my video off because the internet is very bad.
Okay, thanks, Rachana. Thanks for joining us all the way from Cambodia. I've seen the trailer for Currency is really impactful. So I really encourage you to go sign up for the slot, take a look at Currency. It's very impactful because it brings together the local communities and the kind of challenges that conservation groups face as they work alongside different stakeholders. And I think fishing, it's something that is huge in Cambodia and is often a source of hope, by the same time source of conflict for different communities as well.
Yeah.
So thanks, Rachana.
Thank you.
And our last speaker for today is Francis Loke. So I knew Francis from Little Green Men, Singapore. So we were doing cleanups together at some point. And I think so she's now at the Conservation International Singapore as an environment educator. She's now a program manager there. And she's going to be working up on some of the workshops in the Wave of Change Festival as well. So over to you, Francis.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Chong. Thanks also to Kathleen and the Coastal Natives for having us for this Fireside Chat. Really excited to be part of the Waves of Change Festival this year. So I'm an environmental educator, really interested in bridging the gap between natural heritage and cultural heritage. And at Conservation International, I work on school programs, local community engagements, and capacity building opportunities to try to raise awareness about global environmental issues like climate change, ocean conservation, and the state of our mangroves today. So very glad to be here and to support the Waves of Change Festival with 3 workshops happening this weekend. I think I'll leave the rest of the messaging to one of our board of directors, Harrison Ford, through this film. Please enjoy.
Thanks, Francis. Well, that's it. I didn't know Harrison Ford was a board of directors of CI. Wow. And you're okay. So the next up here is I thought we'll just start today's session to understand a bit more about the speakers. And of course, if you have questions that you have, please feel free to pop them in the chat or just speak up and unmute yourself, or you can just use the raise hand function and then we'll just call you up and then you can ask a question, okay? So let's maybe start off with a quick introductory question for all of us. I think most of us who have various reasons for being part of the conservation scene, and maybe just one quick question for everyone. So what is that particular story or the moment in life where you really decided, okay, marine conservation or conservation, it's the thing that I really want to do for the rest of my life, or at least the next 5 years of my life? Were there any moments like this for some of you? So maybe Naomi, would you like to start first?
Sure. Okay, so
yep.
A lot of people find it interesting. I was actually terrified of the ocean as a kid. So whenever my parents would drive us up to Malaysia to like Tioman, they would go out snorkeling on the reef and I would snorkel in the sand. They just used to like make fun of me for that. So I was actually really terrified, even though I always loved animals. But then I think when I was 14, I watched a National Geographic program about sharks. And then suddenly my fear turned to curiosity and I went and got my diving license. And I'm actually still kind of scared of the ocean. I don't like feel comfortable diving or snorkeling, but I just find it fascinating. So I do it anyway. So yeah, I guess that was kind of my moment.
Awesome. So and part of your work now, do you still have to, get close to the water? Or are you working with, areas that are away from water, away from the seas?
Yeah, so actually none of my work is in the ocean or anything like that. It's all at the fishery ports or in the lab. Yeah.
And that's very helpful because I think there are some people who are who can't swim, right? So I think that's one of the questions that we often get because people always ask me if I can't swim, how do I get involved? So I think that's very comforting to know because there are other aspects of conservation that can be involved in.
Yes,
Thanks.
and I actually wish that I had known that sooner because all of my volunteer things were diving because I thought you had to do that. But if I knew there were all these other options, I probably would have started focusing on them earlier.
Exactly, right? So yeah, we don't have to be a diver to be in marine conservation. Exactly. Right, that's good. How about you, Kay?
Actually, interestingly, it was a virtual diving experience that picked me off. So we did an Art Science Museum show in 2018, and part of our business is actually in taking artists and teaching them new technologies and then showcasing their work. And we asked them along the way to focus on the Sustainable Development Goals. And one of the artist collectives at the time, they're called Warrior 9 VR, and they created something called Oceans We Make. And the first ever time that they showcased it to me was the day of the opening. It was, oh my God, because there'd been so much going on. And I put it on And, you know, it's just like, oh, wow, this is cool. See your little diving gloves, and then you get plonked into the ocean. It was so realistic. I held my breath as I was like, oh, went into the ocean. And you're just then surrounded by this pristine ocean. You're like, wow, you see a massive shark go past you. It's really cool, right? It's really hyper realistic diving experience. But then the lady in your ear said, oh no, there's a little bit of trash there. Do you mind just go grabbing it for me? So you just grab that and it ding, and it's like, oh, it's like a little game. Oh, you're, oh god, and then you see more trash, and then it's a ride and catch game. So you're kind of going along, and then you keep having to pick all these pieces of trash. And then it gets faster and faster, and there's more and there's more. And then it's like, suddenly you are completely engulfed. And the lady in your ear is like, oh no, now we have to pull you out. We have to pull you out. As you come out, you are left with the first person perspective of the entirety of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, just like sprawled out in front of you. And I just started crying inside that VR headset. And I just took it off, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, you're gonna have to wipe it for the next person. Like, it was so powerful that it was at that moment that I was like, oh my goodness, this is such a horrific problem. But I also really was then really inspired that, you know, new technologies such as virtual reality and augmented reality can be used to then really make an effect and get people to act. So we actually then worked with some research scientists and did some more focus group studies and et cetera, and we published a research paper, and more than 80% of people who actually do the experience rate themselves a 9 or a 10 out of 10 for how much concern they have for ocean pollution after they do that 3-minute virtual diving experience. So that was the one for me.
Awesome. Is there particular video still available, or is there particular programs?
It's still available, yeah. So I'll put the link in the...
Oh, awesome.
Yes,
right.
yes.
And it's in VR, so meaning that you can just put your...
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's really fun. And that's so interesting, because I think VR is really the thing that helps us to bridge. So I think there are some platforms available. Beyond this, you can actually see Great Barrier Reef. You can, you know, get in touch with different deepest part of the ocean just by through VR itself. So that's really a way to help to get people engaged. So over at Conservation International, for instance, so what are some of the moments that you have that really decided, okay, I want to go into conservation, I want to start Little Green Man, I want to, you know, be part of CIA Singapore. So is there a moment for you, Francis?
Right. I think mine wasn't really a moment, more of a journey, I guess. I think in Singapore growing up, it's really easy to believe in the narrative that we don't really have much, right? No natural resources, no history, no biodiversity, just kind of like buildings and people. But as I got older and kind of explored a little bit my own, joined a bunch of intertidal surveys, learned to dive, went to learn from the local nature community, I kind of realized that none of that was true, right? We are kind of home to a lot of biodiversity in the region, in Singapore even, and it turns out Singapore's waters are home to more than 12,000 marine species, right? I mean, we've got more than 60 islands and we've got all these species, but not many people get to hear about that. And so what I wish was that people told me about these things when I was much younger. So as I came to join cleanups and organize some of my own, I also started to see some of the impacts on the natural ecosystem and these species that I just was really amazed with. And that kind of like, you know, hurt me, you know, like very sayang, right? Because you like those things, but they're getting harmed. So yeah, that was when I felt like more people needed to know about their sense of place, about the biodiversity in Singapore, what that looks like, and then also learn to care for it or feel that they should do something about it, because we're also connected to the region, right? And I think that care and that sense of protection should go beyond Singapore as well, but starting from home, of course.
So it's those small little steps that matter, right? Going to your backyard, take a look at what's out there, and challenging some of the narratives that we've been perpetuating, right, in some sense, right? I think that getting that kind of understanding is very helpful. And is that the same case over in Cambodia, Rachana? Wondering whether, you know, the kind of narrative is also very prevalent in Cambodia, where you are.
Oh, I mean, because from where I am, I mean, I was born in the city, but then I moved to live on the island. But the difference is that once you get deep and you get close to them, you get you see more of what is their reality and what is their needed. It's not like big development or, you know, big money into the family. It's just like how much they can earn to like actually, you know, feed the family. And that actually inspired me a lot to come back to, you know, live on the island and just stay here for like more than, you know, 4 years or 5 years, I don't know. But just seeing the small scale fishermen and, you know, things like that, it's like they don't have hope because nobody actually going and, you know, really try to understand what is their problems and what is the challenges they're facing in the real life. So I think the presence of MCC being there is like kind of the main hope, and also kind of like be their voice, because like they feel like they lose hope and, you know, like nobody is there for them to listen or, you know, to talk to. So like in generally talking about the fishermen and the local community in general, it just so upsetting, because if you know the system of how they turn into like legal fishermen into illegal fishermen, it's just so upsetting. But I will talk more, just like that's the main problem for now. It's like we're trying our best to like be understanding and be there for them. It's like we're here to help. We don't want anything else than just like helping you to know, you know, like get your resource back and get your voice back, and, you know, not being badly damaged and impacted by the illegal fishermen, example, like the trawlers and electric trawlers. So that's what we're trying our best to, you know, put in, and just, yeah. I think that's the main problem at the moment, is like understanding between each other, and, you know, like just here to help. It's not very difficult, but sometimes it's very difficult, you know. It's just they don't see the direct impact. They just see, okay, why are you there? You know, what is important about conservation? But if we don't actually take them to the island and show them, okay, here is the 6 year of conservation, you see by your own eyes, so you cannot, you know, argue more than anything else. Because before we start the conservation on the island, it's like got nothing, like zero fish and no coral, healthy, nothing at all. But then we start, and, you know, it start to be like getting healthy. It's like you get sick and you got time to heal. It's the same with coral. It's the same with like the marine ecosystem. And I think from the effort and from the work that we've been working for like years, some of the fishermen, they do understand and they really respect our work. But I still can say that some really hate us and, you know, can still like throw rocks at us for like doing what they don't want us to do. Yeah. And it's just so real and so upsetting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I remember, yeah, one part of the trailer highlighted this particular side of the conflict as well.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that must be very difficult. I think picking on what you said, right? I just maybe a quick question for some of you as well. What are some of the major misconceptions that people have that you feel, you know, then becomes a barrier for them to start taking their very first step into conservation? So what are some of these barriers that that people tend to have, but that kind of holds them back? Wondering if you have any inputs.
Yeah, I've got something to share. So at the beginning of when we started to plan 100 days to beat plastic pollution with UNEP, we had to really look at the target audience and understand the target audience. So the target audience is squarely 13 to 25-year-olds in Southeast Asia, and specifically across the 7 countries that we focused on. And what we uncovered is that certainly there's a lot of misunderstanding that it's like, but I don't, first of all, I don't live near the sea, right? And it's not me who puts it in there. I put my rubbish in the bin, thank you very much. So this ocean pollution problem is nothing to do with me, thanks, right? So it's like, whoa, okay, no, it's not that. You know, you have to educate people that, you know, yes, even things that you might put in the bin, even things that you might feel you're separating for recycling can go on a truck and it can blow off that truck. It can, it can get to the landfill and even be blown off. Also, a lot of people if they don't live next to the sea, they sometimes live next to a river, but they don't really quite connect that the stuff that maybe they throw in the river might get to the sea. So again, they don't kind of make that connection, right? So we had to kind of like try to make sure that we were appealing to lots of different people, but also trying to say, look, this isn't a question of kind of pointing at fingers, it's your problem, it's everyone's problem. And, just please don't think that just because you're putting your rubbish in the designated place that it's definitely getting to where it should be. It is getting into the ocean. Unfortunately, 80% of marine litter actually comes from land-based sources. So there was that for me, that was the biggest kind of misconception that we had to deal with, certainly across the Southeast Asian audience.
So there's this need for a very strong connection between what an individual does and the kind of impact that the whole of humanity is creating around the globe, right? So in relation to that, right, I think Kate has a question right here. I think Kay might be a good person to answer this. So Kay put in a chat. So as people start going back to the office again, there are colleagues for buying coffee in single-use cups or doing takeaways. So what are some of the methods that have worked in getting others to consider the cost of that disposable versus the other convenience?
As in getting people to consider using a reusable?
Yes, how do you then make the connection, right? Like, so I'm using disposable, it's really convenient for me. How do I make that connection to impact and therefore trying to reduce the amount of disposables being used within our offices?
I mean, I suppose generally speaking, that it's now not that even the UN is moving away from focusing so much on recycling. It's not about kind of, just as long you can have as many cups, plastic cups as you like, but make sure you recycle them. It's more about like reducing overall your consumption of and trying to avoid at any cost any single-use plastic wherever you can. Now, it's very, very hard to completely avoid, and we have to understand that, for example, people in the Philippines, don't have the disposable income even to buy a bottle of shampoo. That's why a lot of them have to buy their shampoo in little sachets. So whilst we continue to have this practice, it's going to be very, very difficult for a lot of people to be like, oh, no, yeah, I'm going to avoid single-use plastic, right? So our campaign is more around that one little step, one little habit, that if you have an everyday habit, for example, going to the coffee shop and getting your takeaway coffee, then for sure you can add it up in your own mind. How many do you go to the office 5 days a week, that's definitely at least minimum 5 cups that you will be saving every single week if you just invest in that one reusable, if you can afford to do that. Try to pick something that is accessible to you as the individual, that is going to be something that you can then keep up. And that's also why we zeroed in on kind of like challenge yourself for 100 days. Research has shown that even if you do something for 21 days, it starts to become a habit. At 66 days, that habit becomes automatic. So you're kind of never going to leave the house without your reusable cup. You'll always take it wherever you are. So, and then kind of, but 66 sounded a bit funny. So like, okay, let's just make it 100. So if you can challenge yourself with that one single habit for 100 days, then you're going to keep that habit. It's very much more likely you're going to keep that habit for life. So I suppose in that sense, getting people to kind of, adopt this kind of habit at the office and trying to get people to do the simple maths in their head, but also just remembering that, it has to become a habitual thing. The worst also, the other situation is just everyone going out and buying loads of reusable cups and then them just gathering dust in the cupboard is also not what we want to have happen, right? So it has to be invest in something, keep it going as a habit, and and try to encourage others to follow you.
Yeah, so I really like the point about building that habit. So basically keeping things accessible, simple, and I think offices are the perfect environment to do it because it's a social environment after all, right? So we kind of like influence others. I'm wondering at CI in Singapore, or CI in general, whether there are such initiatives that, helps nudge people towards reducing their plastic footprint, carbon footprint?
Right. So I guess plastic pollution is not really within the domains of CI. It's not really our bread and butter. But in our school programs, we do target this as well because it's very topical for Singapore and relevant, right? So we try to link it to other concepts within conservation. For example, like Kay mentioned, it's not always just, what is the true cost of that cup versus that reusable, right? I think it's worth also just looking at the life cycle of a plastic cup, right? Is it really just the cost of throwing it away and never seeing it again? What about what happens in the production of it, right? I think we all know that plastics are, like, the main feedstock for plastic is crude oil, right? Which we all know is a non-renewable resource. So is that really the wisest way to spend that resource? Maybe not if it's a disposable item, right? So I think messaging like that really helps people to think more about the links of something as artificial as plastic to nature, right? Which is your fossil fuels and natural environments where that's derived from. And so when we try to think about behavior change, it's also, yes, making the barrier of entry as low as possible. Like, people have to be able to use the reusables easily, right? We've worked with schools where, for example, teachers complained that when they provided reusables and students had to wash it themselves, they never did a good job. So then it attracted pet, right? So then there's a new problem. And somebody else has to deal with that, right? So there's additional cost to trying to implement all of these different schemes to change behavior. And I think that's really challenging. But I think a mindset change is what's needed to feel like this is actually a burden. I think people need to see that if we put in the upfront thought to really think about what processes go through it, who gets affected by it, and how we can just, streamline things better. It can work out in the long run. I think some schools have completely phased out, for example, disposables, which I think is extremely challenging, but also very fulfilling for those involved. So it's not impossible. And I think officers can try to do that as much as possible, but somebody's got to, give the nudge.
Thanks, Francis. So, Rachana, maybe a quick follow-up to this, right? I'm wondering whether single-use plastic is a huge problem over in Cambodia as well.
Oh yes, it is a huge problem, but comparing to the illegal fishing, it's less. But I can say that every morning we wake up, we would walk to the beach and see a lot of rubbish and just plastic bottle, anything like coffee packs and all kind of sort of things that it's like easy individual things that we do all the time, but we don't think. And just seeing that every day, it just put me in a position that thinking whether I should continue using the plastic anymore or not, because it's just right in front of my face every morning. And we do the beach clean and we see, like the labels, and it's just so obvious. But at the same time, comparing to what is happening in the water, it's one of the main problem, but I can say we can control it in the in the level that if we all practice, and just like I said, it's one of the main problem, but at the moment it's not like a big problem that we're facing. And and I think people is still like don't care where were they throw the rubbish and things like that. It's just like, the people are just gonna collect it for me, and but in reality, it just go back to the ocean, go back to the sea, go back to the lakes, and when season change, it's just going around, and it's just all around us, and it's just us producing plastic, us producing rubbish around us. And I just think that for Cambodian people, they don't actually think about it as a big or main problem, or I can say more like the fishermen, it's just like you would go and see, like if you go with crab box fishermen, you would see them like wrap with the small fish and all around for like crab fishing. and the amount of the small plastic is crazy. And if you think that it's gonna destroy, or if you go to explain them, they just don't care, because that's just how they grown up, and that's just how they, learn how to earn the money for their livelihood. So it's just so hard for us to go and to explain them all in one frame. But at the moment, I can see that they also trying their best. When you go to the restaurant in Thap, they have like separate rubbish bin, and they also like get it managed very well. But just the local education itself is still like in the limit that we have to consider, and we have to pay attention regarding the plastic and regarding the ocean issues, and just everything. Because for the local, it's just earning money, feeding the family. Other than that, it's just not their priority at all. So yeah, that would be my answer. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Rachana.
Add to that as well. I mean, absolutely, education, because you can't point fingers at people in Cambodia, in the Philippines, etc. Why do you always throw your rubbish in the river? Do you not know that it goes to the ocean, etc.? But you have to remember, historically, a lot of these people had largely organic waste.
Yes.
They wrapped their things in banana leaves. They had, they made bags out of, materials. Suddenly, they now have plastic bags and all these containers, etc. But nobody told them that these things simply don't biodegrade. So there's an amazing research scientist who's doing some stuff in the Pacific Islands, and she was horrified that people were actually just digging holes in the beach and just burying their plastic bags, when they had actually, but that's how we've always done it. We always just bury our waste. So what are we doing wrong? It's like, no, but they simply didn't understand that these plastic take thousands and thousands of years, or maybe never, to biodegrade and disintegrate. And then what happens then, right? So it's about education, right? It's not about people being, and like they just simply don't care about the environment, and I'm just going to be, doing my own thing. They just don't even understand the scale of the problem and the root of the problem.
Right.
Yeah.
So it seems like there are two very important points here, right? So I think the first part is really our priorities, right? So depending on the context, what our priorities are, and the second part of how education plays a part in this. So I'm just keen to find out from Naomi, as you work in the fish ports and you're working with sharks and rays, and to most Singaporeans, sharks and rays are food. So how would you approach this issue, and what are some of the challenges you face at the fish ports as you try to convince people that while sharks and rays should be left as it is, they shouldn't be eaten? Could you just maybe share with us some of the things that you've been doing on the ground?
So at the fishing ports themselves, it's been quite nice that actually a lot of the fish merchants are quite receptive to the work that we do. So me and Kathy, who's attending, we do the project there together, and we've become quite friendly with a lot of them. And also one of my suppliers who brings me sharks and rays that he catches, he acknowledges there's a problem and he wants things to change and be more sustainable. But one of the things that, I kind of advocate for is I don't think it's right that a lot of people think we shouldn't eat sharks and rays, but it's okay to eat other marine creatures. I think that that's quite a good example of speciesism. And it is actually proven that some sharks and rays can be fished sustainably in the same way that other species of fish can, like what you would consider normal seafood. And so a lot of times, people say, well, I don't eat shark fin soup, or I don't eat barbecue stingray. Well, most sharks and rays are actually caught incidentally in fishing gear that is catching your normal seafood. So even if you're saying no to that stuff, you're still eating seafood which is responsible for incidental capture of sharks and rays as well. So a lot of what me and my peers try and do is we're trying to change that mindset. So let's not just be like, let's not eat sharks and rays, but let's think a bit more about the bigger picture as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm surprised. I thought the people at the fish port would be a little bit harsher on you. Because it really goes against what they're trying to do, right? Because they're trying to sell the fish and There you
Well,
are.
I mean, there's one guy that like really doesn't like us, and every time we try and get data, he shouts at us. But apart from him, like everyone else, like is generally quite nice. And I think that it's an important point because it shouldn't be conservationists against these stakeholders, because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, right? We all want healthy oceans. They want it so they can keep fishing. We want it because we just love marine life. So we all have the same end goal, and it makes sense for all of us to work together on that.
Excellent. I love that. Yeah, it really changes the way I view people at the fish ports. And I think it's really about collaboration, right? I think trying to see the end goal and helping people see the end goal through education, through advocacy. Picking up on that, I think Kathy has I would say a rather tough question for all of you. So if you look in the chat, so Kathy asks, so what are your thoughts about the government's persistent narrative of focusing on individual action and reducing single-use plastics instead of looking at systemic changes and science-based policies? It's a tough question even for me, so I just hope that you guys would be able to give a bit more insights.
I think for us, it's about people being part of the solution, right? It's reframing and saying it's not about people being the problem, but it's people being part of the solution. It's kind of a bit of both, right? So at the same time, it's all players need to come together. So we can't all just sit there and point fingers at each other either. So individuals have to take action. Governments also have to change policies. Corporates also have to bring new products to the table, and people like Coca-Cola have to stop consistently being voted the world's #1 polluter. We've got to stamp out greenwashing, etc. So there's lots of different kind of 3 key players, the individuals, corporates, and governments, that all need to come together. So it might feel like, from the individual perspective, that the government keeps banging on about, oh, you must reduce, and it's all about individual action. At the same time, they need to keep telling us, we need to keep telling each other. And in the meantime, that gives the government time to go and then try to introduce systemic change and make the changes at that higher level that are needed.
Mm. What about the rest? Any thoughts about this really tough question?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a either or thing. I do think, solving the problem needs to come from all angles, based on what you are able to do, right? So for example, for young students, you would think that, okay, the easiest thing they could do is to avoid single-use plastics and of course tell your friends about this and all of that, but they also have a voice, right? When they write into the forum, for example, to talk about certain issues that they're affected by, that lends a voice to youth who don't usually get heard in the public eye. And I think that can be powerful too. I feel that oftentimes people do have something to say about environmental practices and policies and all that, but it doesn't really make it to the higher levels of policymakers, right? So I do think that there is a need to push for more civic participation, so that people can really engage on some of the issues that bother them. Because otherwise it's very often that we would point fingers, and say that, okay, there's always more that can be done. But I don't envy the job of a government because it is very tough to deal with a lot of different competing priorities and voices among people. Yeah, that's a great question, Kathy.
But well put, Francis. I think it is one of the questions we really need to ask ourselves, right? Is it just, the individuals or the government's effort, or is it really collective effort from both ends? I think this is one that we need to ask ourselves, and I think the hidden work behind what the government needs to think about, I think that's something to consider as well, especially when they are trying to manage so many stakeholders in Singapore. So I hope that answers your question, Kathy. Right. The next question that we have, a very common misconception. So we know that there is like 11/11, there's like 12/12, and now you have the same for every single month. Basically, the e-commerce has boomed in Singapore and regionally as well. Is it true that e-commerce is more environmentally friendly compared to bricks and mortar shopping? And that's a question by Kelly. My gut says no, but I don't have the data to support it. I don't know whether you guys know of any of this information.
Chong, Thomas here. Can I answer this?
Oh, wow. Yes. Go ahead, Thomas.
Sorry, so I spent my entire life in supply chain. So this is actually something I know a little bit about, and I can absolutely say that that's not true. So supply chains that go into bricks and mortar are normally more efficient and using more ocean freight as an example, which means that the carbon emissions per item is much less. Clearly, if you're buying from a local e-commerce store that's shipping out of a warehouse in Singapore, the difference is not too big compared to driving down and picking it up yourself. But anyone who buys anything that's flown in from the US or from China or whatever, it's an absolute disaster. So to give you a little bit of an idea of that, a pair of running shoes that is shipped by ocean from Vietnam to Europe uses less or has less carbon emissions than if you pick it up 3 miles in your car. So it is not the ocean transportation that is the carbon problem, it's the final mile. So long explanation to say no, e-commerce is not good if you're looking at carbon emissions. It's absolutely wrong.
Yeah, true.
And there's more, and so that's carbon. The other one is packing materials. Generally, the big retailers are better at managing plastic and paper than e-commerce is. You look, there's a lot of wasted space and actually a lot of packing materials relative to what is in stores. So no, don't do 11/11, even though part of my business is to do that. But I would say don't do it.
Yes, thanks, Thomas. Yes, good to hear from a practitioner. Yeah, I was so surprised the other day when my wife ordered a packaging. So like it's a container, right, for a gift, and it was wrapped in bubble wrap, and then it comes with like a standard plastic bag, and then it's packed in boxes. So a box to keep a box. Yeah, that just doesn't really make sense to me. Yeah.
And if I can also just jump in, there's also the additional carbon footprint of thinking about how that data is stored somewhere in a data center out there.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, there's a lot of different ways to quantify what that carbon footprint is. And I think it's important for people to realize that you get 100% discount if you don't get it, if you don't need it.
Great. Oh, wait, so making this a little bit more applied, right? So apart from not buying it, so if I really need it, what would your advice be? Right, if I really need that particular container for like, my friend's birthday, just to pack it in a nice little box. So what should I do as a consumer? Any thoughts?
Can we bring Thomas back in for this?
Oh, Shinto says thrift store, right?
I was going to say, I like, especially even with like my furniture and stuff now, I always try and get secondhand. If I need to get gifts for people, I buy from businesses that are purposefully being sustainable, or like they don't harm animals and stuff like that. So supporting a business that is trying to do the right thing. But I think most important is just like, don't buy so much stuff. Like if you actually need something, it's fine to get it. And we shouldn't feel guilty about getting things. It's just when people buy way too much of something. And I think if everyone just bought less and we only got what we needed when we needed it, then, it would be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And to echo that, it's also, the volume, yes, bring it down, but also think about the single use nature of anything. So, again, back to that, we always, there was, in the news, it was like, well, yes, but did you know it actually takes a lot more energy and water, etc., to make a cotton tote bag, for example, right? So, and you've got to use that lots and lots and lots of times versus, the kind of carbon footprint of just one single plastic bag, right? We have to remember the history of the plastic bag also. The man who invented it meant for it never, ever to be a single-use item. It was supposed to be a bag for life. Look it up, right? I was surprised to see it myself, right? It's like, oh, no way. Like, so, we should all be sitting there, oh God, rue the day that man ever walked this planet, that he brought this plastic bag to the planet. He had good intentions. He never, ever intended us to throw it away. We ourselves have made this situation into like, oh, yeah, we have this now sudden throwaway culture, where it's very much around kind of on that kind of 11/11. Oh, just buy something, even if he doesn't use it, you don't need it or you don't use it, doesn't matter. You can just throw it away later anyway, right? So just be very mindful of the single-use nature of any item, right? And please try, if you do have to buy something, etc., just get good usage out of it. As Naomi said, don't feel guilty about buying something, wanting something, but make sure you use it. That's the bottom line. And don't just use it once and throw it away.
Excellent. So do you guys have personal tips on where to go for secondhand gifts or ways to reduce some of this consumption? Where would you go to places for gifts?
Is this referring to Catherine's question?
Oh, yes, yes.
A little bit, right?
Yep.
Okay, so actually me, my family and my close friends, we all agreed not to do gifts.
Oh, wow.
Because the point is like you're spending money on something for someone that they might not want, or you can just keep the money and buy yourself something when you need it. So we don't do gifts anymore. And also my dad has saved, when we used to do gifts, my dad saved the same Christmas wrapping paper for like 20 years and just rewrapped everything. So that's a little idea for people as well, if they're into it.
Awesome.
Aside from that, because we don't do gifts, but if we do, then we gift experiences, which I think Kathleen mentioned as well. So like, I don't know, like exercise packages, or I just say like, let's just go for a meal. And we just go for a meal and it's the company that is the gift. It doesn't have to be an item.
Great. Yeah, I think Kathy alluded to that as well. Give an experience of intertidal cleanup. So that's another example.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize how important the gift of time is. Sometimes it's really just about spending time with people, maybe over a meal that you made yourself, or like just going out for a nature walk together. That can be really valuable as well. Yeah, and Kathy, you know me well. I think these can be like life-changing experiences for some people, right? So it's a great idea.
Well, I see some great ideas coming up in the chat group as well. Donations to causes that your family, friends support. And so Anbu has another one as well. Plant a tree, sponsor a certificate for rescued animal, sponsor an animal in the wild. Awesome. Right, gift of time from Tekun, company experiences, meals, right? Great ideas, guys. All right, so I think we've gotten quite a bit of tips on how to reduce our footprint when it comes to over shopping. Just wondering at this point of time, going back to the question on misconception, right? So in the field of your work, what are some other misconceptions that you have? How about Naomi? What's the biggest misconception about sharks and rays that we tend to have?
Actually, it's the one that I said earlier, where it was that everyone thinks that like shark fin soup is the biggest threat to sharks, but actually it's like general overfishing and everything. And I think that people still have that misconception. And I think, I don't know, I find that it's like a very contentious topic to talk to people about. Sorry, my rabbit's like digging an imaginary burrow. But it seems like it's very hard to bring up the issue with people that general overfishing is a problem. It seems controversial, and the idea of maybe going more plant-based is controversial, but I do think that we need to switch our mindset a little bit to accept that reality.
I guess working in a conservation organization, what I can say is that it is a misconception that you have to be a biologist or a scientist to work in conservation. And I think it's important for people to realize that, yes, like scientists are absolutely essential to creating like a good baseline and purpose for the work that you're doing. But you also need people to implement that work, to get buy-in, to socialize that science with other communities and other audiences. That's really important as well. And so we try to offer internship experiences for university students across a wide range of fields, right? For example, in geography, or of course the biological sciences, but also in policy. And it's really to show the breadth of work that can be done within conservation. You don't have to be a biologist to do conservation work. And frankly, I was trained as a social scientist. So I think there's just a lot of entry points to doing environmental conservation. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Speaking of that, right, I'm also wondering, for those people who are not science trained, what are some of the areas that you would recommend so that they can try out having their first foray into marine conservation? So for example, KU in the art scene, how can arts be part of, or artists be part of these conservation efforts? And of course, for Francis in social sciences, how does social sciences have a role to play in marine conservation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we come from the kind of field of, needing to get away from English and words as being the way that we communicate about the environment, right? Unfortunately, 75% of the world doesn't speak English, but 80% of scientific literature is in English. Oh, great. So we are being incredibly not inclusive enough. So where we started with this was like, hang on a minute, artists are some of the best placed people on the planet to communicate difficult to understand topics. Perhaps artists should be the ones who we can put front and center to say, would you be able to use your amazing skills and creativity to then communicate visually using no words or tiny, maybe a small amount of words, the point of this, the call to action. So what we've been doing is getting artists to then start to think about the Sustainable Development Goals, and some of them are really passionate about the ocean, and then drawing, certain things like the Waves of Change little turtle and jellyfish that you see is done by a really cool Singaporean artist called Shamil. He really loves the ocean, and he has created then using Artivive after he started doing one of our workshops, a really beautiful poster that just comes to life, right? So then suddenly you're using Artivive camera, you just point it at the picture and it'll all come to life. So this is kind of the stuff that you'll be able to see at the Art Science Museum. So because we wanted to also go one step further, you see, because we didn't want to just stop at the art. So it's just a bunch of pictures on walls that I'm just going to look at and I'm just going to ignore. We also want to increase that dwell time at that particular artwork. So we say, hey, maybe using the virtual layer over the top of a real life painting or picture or whatever it is, through augmented reality, you've got another opportunity to tell your story, make your picture come to life, get people to stare at your picture even more, use audio, moving images to draw them in and hold them there longer. The longer you have them, then the longer you have a chance to then increase the empathy. And once you have increased empathy, you increase the chance that they're actually going to answer that call to action, which is we must beat plastic pollution, save the ocean, etc., right? So that's, you do not have to be a scientist to get on board with marine litter, and we very much feel that artists should be placed front and center, and we will continue to fight that cause and create opportunities for artists to work with technology on the issues that they care about people and planet, that will then help to preserve the planet for future generations. And using that technology piece, they can then share all of those messages with the world. It doesn't just have to be a picture on a wall in a room in one place. It can be a picture broadcast to every single bedroom, living room, etc., with that important message to get on board, act now, time is running out. So yeah. It's not just a scientist, definitely. If you're an artist or any other kind of, you have a tiny little bit of creativity, you can join this movement.
And just to jump on that, actually, whenever students who are interested in this field or people are thinking how to get involved, I actually say to them, don't go towards the science route. Law, policy, economics, sociology, and communication, that's where the real gaps lie. And nowadays there is a real demand for those specialties. We have so much science and the world is still in trouble, and that's because linking that science to make actual impact with society and at the government level, that's not strong enough yet. So I think that if you're not a natural scientist but you might be good at the creative stuff, like Kay said, or any of those other things I listed, then specialize in that and then you can apply it to conservation, and I think that's very impactful.
So Rachana, just curious, is your background in biology?
My background is on environmental science, but I don't like to label myself. So, marine conservation is like a global thing. So if you think I'm a policeman, what can I do to save my environment? Then you think it's a global thing. But if you think I'm a policeman, I'm just doing what a policeman do. And that's just it, you know. So marine conservation to me is like, I don't know how to say it, but it's global and everyone should be involved in that. Whether you're an actor, whether you're an actress, or you're a singer, or you're an artist, but we're breathing in one planet. So we have the duty, we have the like every right to put everything together and save this planet back together, whether it's like about plastic, or whether about this, you know, air pollution, or whatever it is happening right now. We just have to be together. We don't need to like, I'm a scientist, I have to do this. You are an artist, you have to do this, you have to do that. But if we sit in one table and be like, okay, what is the problem we're facing right now as a human being? What can we do to save this planet? I think that would take us to another bigger picture, and then, you know, see what is small and see what is real in the reality. Like, let's not say I'm Rachana, I'm the ED of Marine Conservation, Conservation Cambodia. I never thought about myself like that. I'm just a human being who loves the ocean, who, you know, abandoned my home, left my dog, and just go live on the island, and that's just it. I just keep it living like that, and I hope that one individual behavior and personality can affect to the other people, you know. And I just think that it's very huge and it's very big, because, you know, the moment that I come to the island, it's not from like thinking about scientists or position in the government. I just like want to help. And if we all come from like the pure intention and, you know, like just want to help, and I think we can talk more and hang out more and, you know, make this world more beautiful than what it is right now. It's just so, I cannot swear, but it's just so bad. It is so bad in the sense that we have to do it all together, whether it's your, whatever you are, we have to do it all together. And that's, I think that's my only solution, is like we come together and we do it together as we're living in the same planet. Yeah.
Yeah, very well put, Rachana. I think the labels that we often put on ourselves, it's something that is very easy to refer to, but inevitably created some barriers, created silos, and it becomes a barrier for us to actually get involved in marine conservation. As I work with youths, I realize that a lot of times I often hear this sentence, oh, I am just a, you know, dash, you know, you can put in whatever labels you want to put in. It could be a youth, I could be, you know, accountant. Why, how can I help? But I always tell students, okay, you're not just something, you know, whatever skill set that you have, whatever interest that you have can be used to help conservation, because we are all in this together, right? So it's just really finding the right partner and finding the right platforms for you to make full use of your interest, your passion, and your skills. So speaking of skills as well as partnerships, so in your course of your work, how do businesses come into play as you go about doing marine conservation work, either here or in the region?
Is it the question for me?
For you, and the rest can chime in as well. So how does businesses come into play right here when we do conservation?
I don't quite get the question. Sorry, can you please ask me again?
So basically, how are businesses involved in marine conservation? Like businesses, private businesses.
Businesses, because they earn money, and we do need funding for supporting the conservation. So it's just simple, and you do business, and you live in the same planet like me, and you do have children. So you got to think about your children, you got to think about your next generation. So if you don't mess it all up for in your next generation, so you have to think about back when you start your business. You don't think just earning the money, but you also think what is your money affecting to the surrounding. So I think business is good as long as you understand where are you come from. Like don't lose your origin. I think for everybody is just the same. Business or not, like you're just earning money, keeping earn money every day, but for the rest of your life, or like at the end of the day, what you gonna do? Like, are you happy with what you earn, or like, is it enough for you, or is it like, are you happy with the ocean, or are you happy with anything? I think that's very important. Yeah.
And if I can just chime in as well, I mean, I think businesses have a major role to play in terms of changing the course of like global issues like climate change and making sure that they protect the ocean ecosystems that exist. Because fundamentally, I think there's also this realization that there is no business on a dead planet, as one of my colleagues famously put. And I think they have the responsibility and capacity to make their work and supply chains more sustainable, ethical, equitable, and try to limit the negative impacts that can have on the oceans, for example, or even the local communities that are involved in some of the work that they do for the long term, right? Because simply put, it's bad for business if they don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, we do work with a few companies that are trying to move the needle and stuff, and certainly companies like Unilever are trying to come up with new packaging, etc. Well, for me, I often just feel like, is it enough? Are they doing enough? Could they do more? The problem with business is obviously that they have shareholders. And shareholders need to have the business put the profits first so that they will then get their payouts, et cetera, et cetera. So you often find that, the greener solution is perhaps today, sadly, still the more expensive one, and therefore not the one that is necessarily chosen. So even when you look at, companies like Unilever, they seem to be trying to do stuff, but when you perhaps look at it in the whole totality of all of the things that they're producing, sometimes, the percentages can be quite low. So I really hope that there is a time when governments can sit up a bit more and be like, well, businesses are not going to be able to do this by themselves. We also then need to perhaps step in and provide subsidies or incentives in some way to help businesses to become more sustainable. Because if we don't do that, then really the only choice that we have is to rest on the consumer, and the consumer has to move with their feet. And then we need back to the good old education. And therefore, if people are not educated, then they will just continue to shop from the places that they know, and they won't know that they're shopping kind of unsustainably in that way. So yeah, I think there's a lot that business can do. They need to do more. But they can't do it on their own. They need the support of consumers changing their buying habits and consumption habits, but I wish that governments would also step in a bit more and not only provide subsidies, but also help maybe the smaller companies to scale up their operations as well, so that living more sustainably or more greenly or more consciously is not the preserve of the rich.
Yeah, and I think commerce is a really good point here in the chat as well. Be opinionated of consumers. Businesses listen to their customers. So if you don't buy, they will change or die. Matter of life, right? So in the closing minutes, right? I just wanted to use Ambu's question that she has listed above. So if there's one tip they would like to give to everybody else, what would that be, Vasey? So I'm assuming, let me just quickly run through the question again. When inspiring action from general public, what is that one action that general public can take every single day that will have the maximum positive impact on marine life? For example, straws, plastic straws, not using plastic straws, minimizing single-use plastics, not eating fish / marine life. So what would that one inspiring action that you will try to advocate for?
For us, obviously, for the 100 days to beat plastic pollution, it's very much about choosing one simple habit to move away from single-use plastics, sustain that habit for 100 days and keep that habit for life. We focus on everyday objects in the campaign: bottle, bag, cutlery, bubble tea cup, mask, takeaway box, and straws, 7 of them that maybe you have an addiction to. Maybe that is, you know, that you every day you are going to the coffee shop and you always have your coffee cup, etc., or you're addicted to bubble tea and you just can't get enough of it, you know. So if it is that one thing and that's your addiction, try, if you can afford it, if it's accessible to you, swap out that bubble tea cup, single-use cup addiction for a reusable, because that really will, because if that is something that you are doing every single day, then that will make a difference, right? And for me recently, my challenge was, you know, the takeaway box. I've got everything else. I've got my reusable cup, I've got my bottle, everything. But the one thing that I was still addicted to, because I've got 2 young kids and, you know, like we like to have a takeaway once a week and all that kind of stuff, is just to stop that and actually get on my bike, buy myself those reusable tin cats, get on my bike and go and get dinner, right? And I lost weight. I enjoy cycling more. I've found, like, really, I have, you know, you build up a little kind of relationship with the little hawkers, because they see you coming and say, oh yeah, it's you again with your tin cats and all that stuff. You know, it's been a really positive experience and I don't want to go back now. So just, and that was my little challenge that I needed to get over, that it's like, no, it's so easy just to have a takeaway and it's such a treat for the kids every week and stuff. It's like, no more. And I've said that to myself because I knew that it was becoming for us a habitual experience. And then every week we're just like, God, we've got more and more of these containers. And of course I don't throw them away, but there's only so many things that I need to keep in my fridge, etc. So I got them stacking. I'm like, okay, this has to stop. So look inside. What is the one habit that you can do to change? And that will make a difference when we all make our own one individual change.
My tip would be to really just get out and fall in love with the ocean. Experience it in all the different ways that you can. You can read books about it, watch documentaries, or just go out and dip your toes into the water and just kind of watch what's happening around you. Because I think it's really important to feel that you want to protect what you love. So if you kind of already love the ocean and understand its interconnectedness with a lot of the different services that you know, the oceans perform by coincidence, you know, for the benefit of people, I think it helps people to appreciate those interconnections better, and allows us to better understand why we do certain things or what the impact of our actions are. And then, of course, talk to people about these things that you're learning every day, right? If you had a good experience in nature, talk about it. Bring people out with you and try to talk, of course, across generations. And I say this because I learn new things every time I talk to people who are younger than me or older than me and about their experiences of Singapore. Yeah.
Thanks, Francis. Anything from you, Naomi?
Yeah, I really don't want to come across like an angry vegan, because I'm not, and like I don't judge people that eat meat. My husband is a carnivore and everything like that, but I just think that being in a developed country like we are in Singapore, where we have access and we have the money, we should use our spending power more to support alternative proteins like plant-based or cell-based. And the reason I say that we should do it is because there's a lot of countries in the world where they don't have this privilege to do it. So we should play our part as privileged people that can, by supporting these industries to help relieve pressure on the oceans.
Thanks, Naomi. How about you, Rachana?
My tip is very easy. Every time I wake up in the morning, I put my hand on my chest and I inhale and exhale. And I think of where it's come from. So it's like, okay, it's from the ocean, it's from the tree. So I got to protect them. It's just that simple. Yeah.
Awesome.
Love that.
Thanks. So maybe one final question from Kathleen to close off today's fire chat, right? So something very close to us. what are your conservation goals for 2022? Now that we are in December 2021. So what is the one conservation goal that you might have for 2022?
Just 2022? I got like
2022.
10 years plans.
Okay, just choose one.
No, everybody can go first. I'm just joking.
So for us, obviously, we're just really looking forward to launching phase 2 of 100 Days to Beat Plastic Pollution. We kind of spotlighted just kind of scratched the surface really of these wonderful sustainability advocates that we've uncovered across the region. So diving deeper with them and then making some educational materials around them, and getting more and more people to share what they are doing, whatever you can do, whether it is becoming another angry vegan or whatever you can do, whatever's in your grasp to do. Please, if you live on social media, if you are the target audience, take to social media. You can make a difference. You can make a ripple effect online by sharing what you're doing, right? So that's where we're going to be at, and also obviously localizing wherever we can all of the English words that we have used in our campaign, and continuing our pledge to really just visually communicate about our planet and what we need to do to save it.
I think on my end, it's really trying to raise the profile of conservation like projects and issues in Singapore, and for people to really think about the bigger picture, right? Because Singapore depends and relies on our region so much, and yet our actions don't really reflect that. So as part of this ocean education journey, CI Singapore is also hoping to launch an ocean conservation virtual learning series early next year to help boost the ecosystem for environmental education in schools, to provide resources for teachers and students to learn about some of these marine issues on the local level, as well as within the Asia Pacific region. So I've been really fortunate to work with school teachers, folks from NParks, the Schmidt Ocean Institute, and various other community stakeholders to ensure that this content is relevant. And I think it's important to have something that speaks to people's hearts. And yeah, hopefully that gets the word out and more people get interested in something like that.
For me, I guess, okay, so my weakness is that I'm not good at being around people. People drain me. I like to be by myself and with animals. But I think in the last year working with my supplier and seeing just how important it is to connect conservationists with the stakeholders at the heart of the issue. So my goal next year is to bridge this gap more for myself and produce more work which is in tandem with those particular stakeholders, because I think that's the best way to produce actual change that can be implemented as well.
And Rachana?
Okay.
Have you chosen the 1 out of the 10?
Okay. 1 out of 10 is like keep hiding on the island. Yeah, just keep doing what we're doing, like we keep doing on the building blocks, anti-trawler blocks, just stop them from doing the damage on the bottom sea, and we keep doing on seagrass survey and working closely with the local, understand what is their real situation. Just very surreal, like in here, we just keep working every day. Like, so if the weather got very windy, we just work on the laptop. We just work on the documents and stuff like that. But being on the island, it's just you have to be very flexible on what the situation throw at you. Dailies, like just a moment ago, I got a call from the Navy guy, like, there's a airboat coming, like 20 boats coming to the island, which we have to go out and test them out. But in real life, what is the 1-year plan? It just we keep doing what we're doing because it's good, and people like starting to understand and starting to know the impact of conservation, and just be real to them and be honest, like, okay guys, this is what's happening. whether it's 1 year, whether it's 5 years, whether it's 10 years, we got all the plans, we got all the time as long as we do it together. So that's at the moment, it's on the table, and how we gonna get into the heart and get into the brain of, you know, the young and also the old or the elder fishermen, because if we trying to understand the perspective of the elder fishermen, it's more like my kids, my children's are my priority. But if we try to understand the children's, it's completely different. So we just have to work our ways, try to understand the situation, work whatever it goes smoothly and it helps everybody. And, you know, and I think that's the plan right now. It's just, like I said, like we've been doing this for like since 28 until now. So it's not something that is not worth doing for. And I can see that people starting to change how they see, like, you know, like Paul Ferber is the director, is the founder of the MCC. But if you go talk to the fishermen, they still think like, oh, you're a foreigner. What do you have to do on my land? What do you have to do on my sea? And that is one of my goals, like, whether you're a foreigner, whether you're a Cambodian, whether you're a Singaporean or Thailand or whatever you are, like, we're all gonna go, we're all gonna be gone, and it's just all the same, like, you know. So I think what we're doing is just talk, communication, and take action, and, you know, trying to take have the people who have to like be actually doing their work, do their work properly. You know, let's say the fishery, they don't have enough resource, or they don't have enough education level to actually, you know, do the job properly. And that's the thing that we have to think about. It's like education, everything all around us, we have to consider. And if you think like, oh, I'm just one person, I cannot do all those things, it's not going to be possible. But if we all think that, oh, I'm not doing this alone, I have AR.T, I have like my friend in Singapore, I have this or there, you know, doing all the work at the same time. Time difference is not a matter. It's just, you know, the spiritual and the heart and the compassion of what you love to do, which is so important. And I want to input that and insert that to the most of Cambodian people. Yeah, that's my main goal. Yeah.
Well put. I think we are all in this together. I think today's session, you got quite a bit of tips and tricks from the expert panel over here. And I think it's really about changing our mindsets, starting small, keeping up with small little habits that we can cultivate, and influencing the people around us. And I think it's a great opportunity to speak to all of you, and please continue to do the great work that you do. Before I end the session today, I have a small little video that Eddie would help to put up. It's a trailer for one of the feature films that will be showed at Waves of Change. And I really hope that this particular video will inspire you, because it's really taught me a lot about humility, about caring for the environment that we live in, the oceans that we love. And this is Eating Up Easter, and this particular film will be shown at WOC. And I hope that the session today has given you enough guidance and advice and tips to create our own wave of change, so that we can be part of this community of protecting the oceans. So here's a short trailer. Thanks so much, and I hope this video gives you a sense of what is to expect. I'll pass it on to Kathleen, and she will let us know what to expect at Wave of Change Festival 2021.
Thank you, Chong, and thank you to all our guests for sharing this evening. I'm not sure about everyone else, but with my camera off, I was laughing, I was feeling sad, I felt inspired. I thought it was a really raw, passionate, and practical discussion. And echoing Anbu in the chat, thank you for all the work that you do and for advocating for ocean protection for future generations. So everyone, please join me in thanking Tai Chong, Francis, Kay, Naomi, and Rachana. We're going to try something. If everyone can please unmute yourselves, I'll give everyone a few moments. Okay, please join me in giving all of them a big round of applause. So with this coming to an end, I hope everyone is feeling empowered to act for the ocean. So once again, we're excited for the Waves of Change Festival to officially launch on Saturday. You'll see a screen that AR.T's put up. We have quite a lineup of activities happening at the Art Science Museum from the 11th to the 31st. So in addition to the Eating Up Easter trailer, which you've just seen, we have 5 other films that are being shown, and all the trailers are available on our website, www.coastalnatives.sg. And we've just been notified yesterday that new seats have been released, so please check it out. We also have the augmented reality art showcase produced by Kay and the Meshminds Foundation, as well as the blind diving audio experiences created by Artwave Studio. And finally, we have ocean-themed workshops for different ages where we still have a few spots left. So thank you everyone again for joining us this evening. We've run 5 minutes late, and thank you for the lively conversation and chat box. We hope you enjoyed it and that we have the pleasure of seeing you again soon. So wishing everyone a wonderful holiday season ahead. Bye everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathleen. Thanks, Tai Chong.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good dinner,
Go back
everyone.
to the island.
Bye.
Thank you.